My name is Dr. Rick Seguil.
And action. Hey, Jay had a... This is Kirk again.
Stress and coping.
Hey everyone. So Emma had a question about exercise intensity. And there are formulas for figuring out how aggressive to push yourself. For those of you who do steps per day or count steps per day, that is a beginning. I think the average American doesn't do enough. Probably because of sedentary lifestyle in the millennium, but 10,000 is a start. When you get to that point, it's important to plan what you're going to do next. And this is the value of a coach. Coaching is when you have a coach or a group, you usually have someone to answer to. A good coach should be able to eyeball and see if they don't take measurements. There's ways to figure out lactate threshold. Cyclists and runners will do this all the time as a metric for improving performance. But if you're just beginning, or you're not that aggressive with your competitive level of training, then you're kind of stuck, because all we have are heart rate monitors. Some nice watches will have heart rate variability, or you can actually use a glucose monitor to see how much you're pushing yourself, how much of that exercise-induced stress response is affecting the metabolism of the body. So that's all we want to do, is to have some form of activity that will challenge and put a little bit of force and damage to your body. So it sounds like you're sadomasochistic, but the objective with beating disease is, if you can have the stressors applied in a controlled fashion, and you have the rehabilitation time to recuperate, build up more muscle, increase mitochondria, then you should be built to also not only fight the next time, or the stressor that is applied next time, but also the insult that usually gets most humans: infection, heart disease, or cancer. So I came from down there, and it was kind of flat. This is Mount Hoy, and now I'm at an incline. This place is about 800 feet up, which is it's not much, but it's one of the highest inclines in DuPage. But it's nice because you can get some resistance here. So if I'm beginning my hiking season, this is a nice place to go to. There's also the steps of Swallow Cliff. And this is it, the top of the peak or summit. Now, if I can do this repetitively over the course of a couple hours, then it'll hopefully get my lactic acid threshold to push a little higher. And that's exactly where we want to try to establish some level of tolerance. Tolerance would be in anticipation of, for my group, a big hike end of the season. I give everybody about 3 to 4 months to train for an excursion. Check out my Dr. Rick Hiking Excursions on Facebook. I think I have a video as well to show you where I can take some of my clients and patients for a challenge. So now I'm going downhill, and as you'll see with my breath, I'll be able to talk and get a sentence out. So, as I was alluding to, some people will use some metric, which is what you should do. You should measure how you are at the beginning, push the envelope, get to that level of high intense activity, and that intensity is going to be measured easily with your heart rate. So there's an old formula which is okay for beginners. Now I don't think it's great for high intensity athletes because they push past that paradigm or those numbers. But if you're beginning, it's 220 minus your age will be your maximum heart rate. Again, that's within some understanding that there's differences in size, differences in weight, differences in age, medical conditions, beta blockers or medicine uses. So that one medicine in particular, a beta blocker, is for high blood pressure, sometimes for Raynaud's and or heart disease, but it locks down your heart rate, so you can't really get past a certain amount of beats per minute. The reason the beta blockers do that is to help prevent the heart from, it helps lower the blood pressure, but helps control the heart rate so you don't overtax it. So if you, barring all that stuff, taking into account all the variability, so I'm now on flat surface and I'm able to get a full sentence out. I'll show you what happens when we go up again. So if you know your maximum heart rate, then you try to train to push and touch that maximum heart rate every 3 or 4 days. Just like in weight training or resistance training, you want to work a certain body part out. I think push to the envelope as far as heart rate, lactic acid development, muscle soreness, and just pain. Honestly, it's pain. But if you push that envelope just to that point and you hold it for me, 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes at a time, that should be a good enough workout. If the muscles have experienced or tasted that maximum intensity using heart rate, or that 220 minus your age formula, let's turn this around, then watch and notice the variability of my breath. Then your heart, your muscles, your mitochondria would have tried to use up all that glycogen that's stored up in the muscle, and then the glycogen stored up in the liver, and when it's exhausted that, theoretically it can go to fats as far as ketosis or ketotic training. But usually what happens is after burning up glycogen, you have an overabundance of lactic acid. If your liver and your blood vessels are very, very well trained, you can turn that lactic acid over and again produce more energy from that lactic acid. If you have poor training, if you have a lot of alcohol the night before, if you have liver disease, you're not going to be able to get that lactic acid turned into or converted into energy. So thus, if you have a large amount of lactic acid developing in the bloodstream and in your muscles become tight, you become a bit acidotic, but not in the ketosis way, which is, I think, a lot of people that do nutritional ketosis or fasted exercise will like that pushing of the envelope and that taste. But those of you who are just starting into training, you're not going to like the feeling, because it's a signal to the body and the brain that you have to slow down. It's a built-in mechanism. But if you're not used to it, as I took a group to Yosemite, one of the people that wasn't used to climbing an incline, after our first ascent, said, I can't do it anymore, because it's a very uncomfortable feeling. Imagine if you're middle-aged and you start to have shortness of breath and chest pain. What do you think? I mean, it's probably going to be from climbing a mountain, but some people will know, ooh, that's probably a heart attack, at least in the back of their minds. So most people will think that, and then as you continue extending and the group takes off and you're slowing down, the mind wanders, and usually most of my patients will, or clients I take, the untrained ones will just slow down further and further. And that usually is make or break. But in this concept of what I'm trying to teach you as far as intense activity, if you look at your maximum heart rate, which is also lactic acid threshold, and you try to touch that in about 10 to 30 minutes, and you do it on a regular basis, say twice a week. I think that'll be enough to stimulate muscle and hormesis to occur so that the body adapts to that and tries to overcome the stress that's being applied. So, if done properly over the course of a couple months, and if you're well rested between training intervals and you're eating excellent building blocks of protein, fats, and carbohydrates, healthy ones, then there's no reason that the human body should not be able to overcome, fine-tune, and get healthier. That's the name of the game, is if you are fine-tuned and going downhill now. Again, notice my breath. This is not max. I'd say my heart rate is, hold on a second, not to divert off of our topic, but my heart rate's about 120. Technically, that's just beginning of moderate intensity. So, which brings me to another point of our metric, is you can do perceived exertion to figure out, am I pushing my body, my heart, my muscles enough to improve at the end of a season? And if you can't measure or don't want to measure the maximum heart rate with that old formula, you can do perceived exertion. Perceived exertion is starting with how I talk at the bottom of this hill. Easy full sentences, no breaks. And then to the point of, I think it goes from 6 to 20. That's the random scale of perceived exertion. 20, or close to 20, is when you can't even speak. Say nothing more than a few sentences per breath. And the breath becomes pretty frequent. So sentences are usually blasted out every breath, and so you can tell I'm even easing up. Going downhill, it uses different muscles, and I'm using gravity to assist me, so I'm not working. I have a backpack that has about 20 pounds, and that's just starting. To train for some big peaks in the United States, you have to have at least 40 to 60 pounds, I think. That'll be good training. In Illinois, that's the only way to develop resistance, because we have no mountains here. Unless you belong to a gym and you can do a stair stepper or a very high inclined treadmill. So you notice I can get out a full sentence without having to break for a breath. And again, that's perceived exertion. So you go between comfortable talking, like walking in a mall, and to can't get a sentence out between breaths, and the breaths are very short, something like that. So if you try to push to perceived exertion as high as you can, again, if you follow the 6 to 20 scale, or maybe just stick with the same thing, 0 to 5. I should write this down as my patients try to get their own intense exercise routines scheduled or devised. I'd say 0 to or 1 to 5 should be what we're looking for. So perceived exertion of about at its highest level, turn it around, should give you enough of a stimulus again to push yourself to the next level. And here's the other thing. Here's the caution. You can also use Garmin watches, Fitbits, what I mentioned before. Here's the other caution, is that if you do it on your own, which I have a lot of patients doing because supposedly the money to pay for a trainer, a personal trainer, is not around. And if it's not available, I understand, but I don't know what trainers go for nowadays. But the value is in that I think when you have an authority to answer to, just like tobacco cessation, if you do it on your own, I think that's honorable. But if you fall off the wagon in 6 weeks to 3 months, tobacco cessation is supposed to be a lifetime. So I would not call that a win if you can get off for half of a year, that's not a win. So to do it on your own, the likelihood is most humans will probably cave in and not make it to the point where they accelerate to the next level, which would be, in tobacco terms, not smoking and not gaining weight. So in exercise terms, it would be you don't get to lose your weight, you don't get to increase your cardiovascular fitness, and or you don't get to stop your medicines, which is my goal. If you're healthy enough, it's not just I try to get people off of prescription medicines. If you're healthy enough, you don't need the prescription medicines. So I think that Western medicine is great in the fact that if you have major disease, Band-Aids can be applied, whether medicine or surgery, to control the speed of your disease or dying from that disease. But if you have no inspiration to make a change after that, you'll just continue on from that point with a controlled disease process. But as you age, you will take on more disease no matter what. So the idea would be, if you just sit back and say, okay, I'm stable for now, can't afford a trainer, do what I can, go back to work, eventually those Band-Aids will fail you. So please don't be content with just taking your pills. Every hypertensive, every diabetic, every cholesterol patient, every stent patient that I have, if you don't make any changes, no matter what the excuse, that disease will 5 to 10 years come back and become symptomatic. So just a word of caution. Thus the reason why I got to get out and do what I'm doing, because I have a bad history in the family of cancer and heart ailments. So knowing what might come my way, and it might be more medical anxiety, perhaps, not pathologic, but I'm a little obsessed to make sure I make it to see my hopefully great grandkids and teach them the wisdom of avoidance or life preservation. So again, as I hit the top of this hill, it's beautiful up here, by the way. No mosquitoes yet. This is in Blackwell Forest Preserve in DuPage off of Butterfield and Winfield Road. But if I can get I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. If I can get the body fine-tuned enough, I believe it resonates with me that whoever does that, will at the least, will not be guilty in case you do come up with the diseases that afflict most Americans. Top 3 being heart attack, cancer, and neurodegenerative disorders. You'll at least be able to say, I tried my best. And number 2, in that realm, if you do have to be confronted with the treatment plans according to Western medicine, that would be bypass or stent, cancer intervention, or stroke rehab, you'll be at a higher level of fitness compared to most other Americans, so you'll be able to control the disease process and recuperate, hopefully reverse, faster than anybody else. So that would be the least. The most would be you actually be able to beat the disease before you would even become a statistic in the United States. So again, it's important to always fine-tune your lifestyle. I was just at a confirmation party yesterday. Lots of food, and the food was celebration food, but I knew I was going out today, so I tried to hold back. I indulged in some beer while I was chopping wood, but I maintained no meat, took in a ton of carbohydrates, but again, that's okay. If I go to every outing and tell every grandma, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan, they're going to hate me. And that's rude because it's a feast. So really, just because you're trying to be healthy doesn't mean you have to avoid social situations. I think there's beauty. If you look at the blue zones, there is beauty in being healthy. But there also, the question is, longevity probably should be matched up with family togetherness, family grounding, a sense of belonging in the community, which is really important. So I try as best as possible to take advantage of the feast. Here we go. This will be the last time. Anticipating that I'm going to be feasting for you guys too, even if you hit those every 2 to 3 days, hitting your max intensity exercise using heart rate or perceived exertion. If you do have a barbecue coming up, pay it forward. So a lot of you that in Chicago that follow me, you guys know you gain weight in the wintertime in Chicago because there's not much to do, and seasonal affective disorder will knock down your morale. I mean, I have these heavy boots that, I don't know if you can see them, heavy boots that probably weigh about 3 pounds each, extra training, but they're winter boots. So I don't let winter, in fact, I've taken out groups in the middle of a snowstorm. But nighttime, snowstorm, rain, doesn't matter. Your heart, your brain, and your cancer-fighting cells don't care. So always train, but anticipating that you're going to gain weight for the winter holidays, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Passover, New Year's, Valentine's Day. Get into October with a lower weight than usual. That way, at least if by 5-10 pounds, try your hardest for a summer in Chicago. That way when wintertime weight gain comes up, you won't be so guilty, and you'll have a little bit of wiggle room to play around with for waistline or body weight or BMI. So that is why, in a nutshell, I asked my guys to push as hard as possible. I'm going to try to get this hill. Push as hard as possible to make it to a level of fitness that just drives the body to do better. Athletes know that when they push as hard as possible to near throwing up, that they will be trained so the next time they push, ain't no gonna be no more throwing up. Why? Because your level of tolerance has improved. So this is a challenge that I'd rather have. That lactic acid, my hamstrings are killing me. Nasty. I'd rather have this level of challenge than being stuck in an ICU with a bunch of doctors that are saying, I'm not sure we can do anything. Worst words in my life were when my father passed away. I had some of the biggest teams in California: neurology, neurosurgery, ICU, intensivist, saying there's not much we can do. And I say, bullshit. There's always something we can do. The problem is, if you wait till the last minute, it's going to be just so hard to climb that mountain. So if you kind of train before that mountain hits you, if you don't ever hit the mountain, that's cool. If you hit the mountain, at least you tried your best. So Emma, hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea, and you don't have to get out and train on a trail. You can apply this formula in the gym, in weight sets, in your treadmill. I always say, go to the next level. If you're used to a cadence on your treadmill where you're too comfortable, not short of breath, I want you to feel and be just like I am when I hit this hill. That's about moderate to intense. And if you can do that for a sustained 10 to 20 minutes, at least once a week, then recuperate. I think if you keep on doing that and keep on pushing, because everybody will usually get very efficient with their treadmill work. Everybody kind of can't get, well, I guess you could. With weight training, I don't think that we should just sit there, look in the mirror, and wait between sets. Bang them out. Giant sets, super sets, whatever you want to call it. High intensity interval training. Don't take a break. Obviously, unless you have heart problem, but that's why you need a trainer. Don't take a break, push as hard as you can, recuperate, get home. Eat properly, hydrate properly. Spending an hour in the gym, for people that work 50 to 60 hours a week, that's way too much time. I spend more time driving to my gym than actually in the gym. But I'm not sociable. I'm too focused on what I have to do. I'm in and out, I don't talk to anybody. And I usually go early in the morning. So it is now, I don't know what time it is, but my Garmin is saying I just finished about 3 miles. So I'll be recuperating, probably stopping in, doing my shopping for the week. I think Mariano's and Whole Foods is open, and that should be it. So I have a good question. Hopefully, if any of you other guys have any comments on how you hit maximum intensity, put them down below. We can help Emma out and everybody else. If you know a relative or friend that's struggling, meaning that they seem to be exercising, but they're not losing any weight, not able to get off their medicines, can't lower their sugars or glucoses, send this to them. Maybe it'll give them an idea of how to push. So I think I'll do this one more time. Otherwise, I'll see you. Hey, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.